Welcome to the SIWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SIWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here with one of our new guest hosts, Mikael Castaldo, and he comes to us with a background in consulting, actually, but now he works in kind of credit and RateHub and doing stuff like that. So, Mikael, if you want to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now, and then we'll go back into time and figure out what you were like as a kid and how you got to where you are. So, what are you up to nowadays?
That sounds great. Yeah. And thanks again for having me on the podcast, Luki. Super happy to be here. My name is Mikael Castaldo. Right now, I'm the general manager for the everyday banking division of RateHub. RateHub, we're Canada's largest price comparison website. So best way to think of us is the Expedia for personal finance. Whenever you're looking to buy a personal finance product, you can compare and then buy, transact with us. So I run our credit card banking and investing division. I've been doing that for about 2 years. Kind of overseeing product stuff, marketing, content, partnerships. And prior to that, I kicked off my career in consulting. I was doing strategy consulting at BCG, mostly focused on the telecommunications space.
Sounds good. So if you can go back into time and just let us know, what was Mika like as a kid? So what was kind of the earliest, fondest memory that you might have, and how did you get from that kid to where you are now? And obviously we'll take a few stops along the journey, but what were you like as a kid?
Yeah, it's funny. The earliest memory I have is me destroying stuff in my grandmother's vegetable garden. So that's probably not a good one. Yeah, I think as a kid, probably not too different from now in the sense of like I kind of liked I liked reading. I was a curious kid. I was a nerdy kid. I had kind of like a broadish set of interests. And I was always kind of wondering why things were the way that they were. I find that kind of personality gets you farther later in life than it does as a 5-year-old. But
Sure.
I think probably curiosity is the one common trait to me as a 5-year-old, where I would try and escape from my playpen because it was kind of restricting to now. I guess I'm still curious about stuff. So that hasn't really changed.
Sounds good. And what were some of the major influences along the way? So you're the curious kid. Were you kind of like a bookworm, that type of nerdy type of kid? And then who kind of influenced you along the way, and how did you ultimately get into or think about consulting?
Yeah, I was definitely a bookworm. My parents always read to me growing up, which now I say was great because it kind of fostered a love of reading. So that was definitely a strong influence. My grandparents were also a strong influence, kind of pushing the same kind of thing. And then I think something a lot of people don't talk about is also my friends kind of were pretty similar. So all of that pushing me in the same direction. I think like no kid knows that management consulting is a job.
No.
It's like not.
Well, nowadays maybe they do, but yeah, before that they didn't. Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Like I think as a kid, I was just like, oh, business is a thing, whatever that means. But I think as a kid, I actually wanted to be an architect. And then I was thinking I wanted to be a historian, which is kind of a trend that never really disappeared since I minored in history in undergrad, and I still like reading that a lot. But I think as I started learning more and more about like what careers were out there, and also kind of how to get started in a career in business, what kind of training ground would have appealed to someone like me. I think pretty early in undergrad, I think it was first year, early into second year, I came across consulting as a thing. I just started talking to a bunch of folks that were working in the space. I was doing some reading about it. And at the time, it seemed like, okay, consulting is where I want to start my career. It's this cool job where you get to work on different problems all the time. You're solving top level issues, which is all true. But I think like anyone who is looking to start or is excited about a job early in undergrad, like I hadn't really done my due diligence.
Sure.
So I think I definitely had some blinders on, but as I kept talking to people, which I think is an important thing to do, that I'd encourage anyone to do, I learned more about what consulting is really like, both like the exciting stuff you get to solve cool problems, some of the not so exciting stuff. I thought more deeply about how it kind of connected and what I wanted to do with my overall career. And then, even though some consultants tried to talk me out of it, in second and third year, I internalized their points and then realized that I wanted to do it regardless, although kind of a little bit more tactically. So it was a slightly winding journey, but probably always leading there. Yeah, I thought consulting is where I started off my career and definitely helped me get to where I am right now.
Cool. Before we delve into consulting, can we talk a little bit about that decision into the business program? So you want to be an architect, a historian, but then ultimately landed on business. So how do you make that decision, or how do you rationalize that I don't want to go the architecture route, I don't want to go the history route, and like, because the business is so broad anyway.
Totally.
How do you make that decision?
Yeah, I'll be honest, and it wasn't really a decision. I think a lot of high school kids, I mean, there's an enormous amount of pressure that's put on you at that age to figure out the path that you want to go down.
Sure.
And I wouldn't say it was a particularly thoughtful decision. I didn't really do my homework. I didn't really think about like what jobs are available if I study history versus if I study business. It was more of like a gut instinct thing where it was like, okay, if I study business, it's reasonably interesting and I can get a job, can always minor in other stuff. My parents were pushing me in that direction, but it was not a thoughtful process at all. And it would not be how, like, if I was going to go back, I'm not saying I wouldn't have studied business, but I would have thought through the decision in a very different way.
Sure. And did you have any like inklings? Because a lot of folks are like the doctor and the engineer are other career paths, and then obviously the accountant lawyer are the two other ones that most people kind of aspire to be. Were those other ones in the mix, or was it purely no, just business seemed like it was going to be a good fit?
No, I applied to just business and history programs for undergrad. I think like in terms of some people's brains work very well in like the liberal arts humanities sense, other people's brains work very well in like a quantitative engineer, accountant, legal sense. I'm definitely not the second one. I'm much more the first one. So I knew that I would probably be a terrible doctor, terrible lawyer, terrible accountant. My worst grades in undergrad were in accounting. So for me, it was never like doctor, lawyer, engineer, or business. It was business or academic. I applied to both, got into both, and then I went with business. But again, it wasn't a super deeply thought out choice. Not saying I would have done something differently though. Sure.
So now you're in undergrad and you're in this business degree, and then you're starting to explore career paths. And then you said that you found consulting, and did you kind of have, well, I think you said you had your blinders on and you were really dead set on consulting pretty much for your whole academic career. How did you kind of tailor yourself or set yourself up for success? Because you ultimately went to BCG, one of the big three, which don't generally recruit widely, at least in most schools in Canada. So how did you kind of get yourself into there? What were some kind of key tips and tricks that you might want to share with folks that are interested on following your career path?
Yeah, that's a great question. And before I get into that, I just want to tell you a quick story about just how much my blinders were on, and just being a cautionary tale for something that you shouldn't do. I think like a lot of students get excited about a certain career path in first and second year. Accounting is a big culprit where like you'll go to a bunch of info sessions. It'll seem like the greatest thing in the world. You'll not really have talked to that many people in the field, but you'll be enamored. That's what happened to me with consulting, where it was, I spoke to a few people, went to an info event, and then read a few books on the history of consulting. And I was like, this is the greatest thing, to the point that there was a Microsoft event on campus in second year. And the representative was asking, oh, does anyone know what they want to do after undergrad? And I put my hand up, not thinking that I would actually be called on. And then he calls on me. He's like, what do you want to do? So instead of saying, oh, I want to work at Microsoft, I say, I want to work in consulting. And then he says, well, do you know what firm you want to work at? And then I was like, I want to work at BCG. So this is one of those super rare situations where what I was wishing for in second year actually ended up happening. But I had no idea what I was talking about. Like I didn't really have any good reason for why I wanted to work at BCG. I didn't really understand what it entailed. I think I was just overly enamored with the concept, to the point that I probably could have played that info session more intelligently. But I think going from that phase to eventually realizing that I really do want to do consulting was just about talking to people in the field, understanding more about like, where did consulting take you in your career? Sure, the work is interesting, but I think interesting work can only get you so far. There's a lot more that you need, or at least I need in a job, in terms of like connection with other people, feeling like you're making an impact. Freedom and independence is a big thing for me. So I think from the point where I realized, okay, I really want to do this, not just like blinders on, enamored, to me interviewing rigorously for consulting, coming from a non-target school like U of T Scarborough or many other schools in Canada, you're not going to have the big consulting firms coming on campus. And there's probably going to be a good degree of skepticism because you're not going to an Ivy League school or let's say even a Queen's or Ivy in Canada, and they're going to be wondering like if you're a risk to them. So I think the biggest thing that I had to do was show them that I wasn't a risk. And show them that I was serious about this, that I was a safe choice, that I would make them look good if they recommended me, rather than seeming like some sort of wild card. And I just made sure I was really involved in clubs, that I was taking on a bunch of internships that would have signaled that I would be a good fit for consulting. So like strategy internships, public policy stuff, keeping my grades reasonably high, and then talking to people and building relationships over the long term, rather than just hitting people up at the last minute, in August before September recruiting, where it's very clear why you're reaching out to them. So multiple things. Happy to dive into kind of what I did on each of those paths, but that's what the high level path looks like.
Yeah, if you don't mind sharing a little bit more on, let's say the clubs, because you mentioned extracurriculars. Does that mean you're the president of this and that club and the founder of this and that thing? Or was it just, no, you know what, it was a smaller role or a different role? So what was your involvement in student clubs like?
Yeah, unfortunately for consulting, it is important to have like a president, founder, VP level role in clubs in undergrad, because they look for, signs of leadership. And for better or for worse, the filter that they use is kind of your rank in the club, which has its own problems. But I was involved in U of T Scarborough's case competition club, and I did that for about 2 years, where I think I enjoyed the competing part of it a lot more than the running the club part of it. But we're doing a bunch of case competitions, also signaling hopefully to consulting recruiters that, hey, I really like solving business problems. I have a track record of at least enjoying and doing reasonably well at it in an artificial setting like case competitions. So I think seeing decent performance in case competitions, leading the club, as well as other extracurriculars that would have showed analytical skills, like I did undergraduate research fellowship and I was a TA, or again, also things that made me seem like a safe choice. Which when you're coming from a school that is not heavily recruited from is like really what I was trying to emphasize in my resume.
And if we jump to the internship, so it sounds like you purposely chose internships in strategy, and you said public policy as well, because that made you safer as a choice. What was the process like to get into those types of roles?
Yeah, the public policy one was pretty straightforward, because so one of the great things about my undergrad program at U of T Scarborough is it was a co-op program. So a lot of employers would come to the school and post their jobs. That's how I found the public policy one. It was a public policy analyst role at the Ontario Financing Authority, which is basically like one of the capital markets arms, especially on the debt side of the government of Ontario. And it was really interesting time to be there, because it was just after the Hydro One IPO. The quality of people there is extremely strong, and they taught me a lot about like financial modeling. But in terms of getting the job, I really just applied on my on the U of T Scarborough co-op portal, and then I think they saw that I had done the case competition stuff at that point. My first internship was at a boutique consulting firm. And I think I fit the kind of profile that they were looking for. As for the second one that I did, so my last internship in undergrad was a corporate strategy analyst position at Samsung. And this one again was posted through the U of T Scarborough co-op portal, but I was super excited about this job and I didn't want to take any chances. So yes, I applied on the co-op portal, but then I also found the hiring manager on LinkedIn. Asked him a few questions about the job, just kind of to make sure that, it was something that I'd be interested in, and then also to get myself on his radar in a non-pushy way. We kind of connected a little bit before the interview. And then it was a case interview, which is what I'd been prepping for a long time. So that naturally went well. And then I got the job there. And what my manager had said was, hey, like, you were the only person out of all of the interviewees that like reached out to me beforehand. I thought that was unique because you did it in a polite way. It wasn't too pushy. So I guess he remembered that, and that helped to increase my chances. And I would say more than any internship that I had done, that really helped my trajectory to get into consulting, both because of the brand, sure, but also I had a manager that really believed in me, that I'm still super close to and in touch with to this day. He did cases with me every week, knowing that I wanted to break into consulting. Wow. So yeah, like having people like that in my career is something that I'm super grateful for. People older, wiser, willing to invest in me, even when I'm not at my best and I'm making a bunch of silly mistakes. I definitely want to be able to pay that back with people on my team today, because yeah, if you can find someone like that that is willing to push you and invest in you and really care about you, it made all the difference for me.
Yeah, and I think that that's important advice, because what you mentioned about connecting with folks at the company, at the jobs that you're interested in, a lot of people say, well, doesn't everybody do that? Well, no, that actually is a little bit more rare than you think. So the fact that you are doing it, and to your point about doing it in a non-pushy way, not where like, hey, I'm connecting with you to get a job. Well, no, that's not the way that you want to approach it. You want it to build a relationship and things like that. And I think that, yeah, you lucked out in having someone that really wants you to be successful. And if you can find organizations, or really it's just people, not necessarily the organizations, the people that can kind of mentor you and guide you along the way, that's definitely very helpful. And you mentioned before also for one of your keys to getting into consulting was those longer term relationships. So obviously this was a more shorter one where there was a job, so you connect with someone kind of there. So there was a little bit of luck involved in that one because they were open to that. But when did you start kind of networking for the ultimate graduation job for consulting? Was that like at first year when you found out, or did you wait till a little later on, and how did you develop those longer term networking connections and relationships?
Yeah, so my path on that might be a little bit different from what most people might pursue, because
Okay.
the two mentors, aside from, so I had my mentor Dean at Samsung, but aside from him, the two people that I think made the biggest difference on my career until kind of where I am right now were two mentors that I was matched up with through case competitions. So it was,
Okay.
as I do it, you do this case competition. One of the prizes for winning is that you get matched up with this mentor, which is I lucked out because these were extremely senior people, had done super interesting things in their career and had a ton to teach me. And again, this was a point in my career where like, I think, and they were super patient with me. If I was to go back and meet me from undergrad, I don't think that I would have been nearly as patient, which I have to work on because it takes time for everyone to kind of get to that point. But yeah, so I met my first mentor. His name's Evan Wood. He's an EVP at Environics Analytics right now, but he had like a long career as like a tech executive. And he helped me think through those options. He connected me with a bunch of people at consulting firms. And this was earlier on in like second year. And it was his connections that helped me kind of think through, is consulting right for me, and really pushing myself on, why am I doing this? Am I just doing it because it's cool work and it's prestigious? And those are horrible reasons to do any job. So I think moving away from that. And then also through a case competition, I got matched up with another mentor whose name's Gerard Schmid. Again, he's one of the people who's had the biggest impact on my life. We kind of met regularly for coffee over the course of 1 or 2 years, maybe a little bit longer, just talking about career stuff, life stuff. He used to work at McKinsey. He had like a super kind of illustrious career working at McKinsey, being a COO of kind of the online division of CIBC in its early incarnations. Then he was CEO of this company called Davis and Henderson. Now he's at another kind of tech firm called Diebold Nixdorf. So again, like super senior person, has seen a lot of interesting things, very reflective. And I think he pushed me to think and consider my career path in very deliberate ways. And again, from his networks at McKinsey, he was able to connect me with people at BCG and at other consulting firms. I think so through those connections and through a few others, I was able to speak to people at pretty much all of the consulting firms that I would have been interested in. Yeah, they were just kind enough to give me a high quality referral. I know this is something that you talk about a lot, Luki. It's like low quality referrals versus high quality referrals. And it just made it so much easier, because if I had cold messaged the exact same people at BCG, at McKinsey, at Bain, there's no way that they wouldn't have answered my message. Even if I had got a weaker referral, they might not have been as inclined to help me. But it was because of those connections that I met these people, we connected, they were willing to give me a chance. And then eventually they helped me get in touch with the right people for an interview.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you highlighted was not just the importance of networking, but it's also the network of your network, right? Because it actually wasn't necessarily these people that helped you get the role. It was the people that these people knew, right? And there's the whole, what is that? The 6 degrees of separation, where everybody knows each other through 6 people, that sort of thing. So everyone knows everybody, and it's a smaller world than you think. So if you are connecting with someone purely to get a job, then that intent kind of shows, right? But if you connect with them to really build a relationship and be curious, and I guess you lucked out that these were patient people, as you said that.
Extremely kind people, yeah.
So maybe you lucked out in that regard, but I think that that's something that's definitely important. And then so you finally end up landing this dream job at one of the big three consulting firms, and you spent a couple of years there. Was it everything you imagined, or what were some of the things that ended that changed your career path along the way?
It genuinely was. I mean, I say I got exactly what I expected, which is very rare. I think every promise, both the good and the bad,
Right.
that consulting firms directly or indirectly would have made, they delivered on in my experience. So on the good side of things, really interesting work, exceptional quality of people that you're working on. They put a lot of trust in you early in your career when you are kind of a wild card.
Right.
Really good training ground, and just like a fun place to be from like a culture standpoint. And then from the kind of not so great side of things, I mean, everyone knows it's a high burn job. You're working really long hours, a lot of travel, which I expected kind of that early on in my career, but it still takes a toll. And I think the fact that as an advisor, you are always 1 degree removed from the problem. So I knew that I wanted to work in consulting because I wanted to learn more about kind of what working in business and solving these kinds of problems was like, get training on how to be a problem solver. And then especially coming from a non-target school, I hate having to keep using that word, but having the extra like stamp of legitimacy opened up a lot of doors for me later on. So it was, I think I got everything that I would have expected. It was a fantastic experience. If I had to do it all over again, I absolutely would. And I have nothing but great things to say about BCG.
What are some interesting highlights of any projects, any destinations, any meals, or anything that you've done? Because I know a lot of folks are interested in that sort of stuff, and obviously not going into too many details for anything like confidentiality. But what are a couple of highlights that you probably share with from a consulting perspective?
Yeah, I'll talk project stuff and then fun stuff. So on project stuff, the first project that I ended up working on in consulting was one of the most interesting ones where, again, I was 21 at the time, right out of school, and I was working on a high-level strategy project for one of the biggest manufacturing companies in Canada. They had brought in a new CEO, and my job was to figure out the build, well, obviously along with the business head, but work with the business head to figure out the 5-year strategy for their parts and services division.
Cool.
So being able to do this and have actual like first name basis relationship with C-level executives on my first project was crazy. That happens very rarely, even in consulting. While you're at like the analyst or associate role, you might get one project in 2 years where you're building relationships with people that senior. Usually it's VP level. So the fact that that was my first project was super cool. And again, I had a team and a manager that really believed in me and was willing to give me kind of a wide amount of space to learn and grow and make mistakes. So that was just a super cool project. The fact that, okay, my first project in consulting is exactly what they said it would be. Again, not to say all of them are, but the first one was really spectacular. And then from a fun side of things, to a certain degree, like consulting is also, it's a crash course in business. It's also a crash course in dining. Because, you have these fun team events now and then, and a lot of the working sessions that you'll do with clients, there's going to be food involved. So I think it was also a good way to get to know some nice restaurants in the city, build good relationships with people at BCG. And the friends that I made there are going to be lifelong friends as well, because it's a trenches environment. And I think similar to undergrad, when you're working alongside the same people every day in a high pressure environment, it brings you closer for sure.
For sure. I think one of my highlights from consulting, well, the first travel project that I was on, it was actually with one of the movie studios in California. So the work itself wasn't that great, but the client was pretty cool, right? So we were actually on the studio lot, and there would be a couple of celebrities on walking back and forth. And I came one day, and everybody was gone from the office. I'm like, where is everybody? Where'd they go? And they all come back a couple of hours later, and I asked, "Where did you guys go?" It's like, "Oh, we were at a taping of Friends." It's like, and we I guess we forgot to ask you to come along. And I'm like, well, thanks a lot. But anyways, I was a kind of a consultant there, and everybody else was full time, so that was okay. And
That's amazing.
we stayed over a weekend, and we were like at a hotel just overlooking Beverly Hills, that sort of thing. So it was spoiled for being that first project type of thing. But as you said, there's the good and the other stuff, right? That's there.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like the things kind of met your expectation. So why the switch? How did you decide to move on and end up at RateHub instead?
Yeah, I mean, going into consulting, when I was talking about the shift in my perspective, where originally it was, I want to work in consulting because you work on interesting problems, it's this sexy career path, all of those wrong reasons. And then eventually I was thinking about, okay, what should my real motivators be? What do I really want from life? It was, I want to be an operator. I want to eventually own a business one day, and help build something. And I think knowing that, I was like, okay, I want to go in consulting so that I can build this base skill set of problem solving and broader business. And then with that being my long-term goal, an opportunity came up kind of 2 years in, where I could be an owner, and like in terms of owning a specific business unit, P&L owner, and building something. And I think with that being the direction I wanted to take my career in, it was the right time for me to make a switch. So this opportunity at RateHub came up. RateHub CEO Alyssa, who again is one of the people that's had the biggest impact on my life, and I'm super grateful to her as a leader and as a person. We were connected. She was an ex-consultant, and she was looking for someone to launch some new business units at RateHub. So we connected, and it was kind of a great fit on both sides really quickly. And I went to RateHub, launched their life insurance and travel insurance business units, and then kind of few internal moves. Now I'm running the everyday banking business unit, but effectively the same job, just general management kind of thing, which is what I always wanted to do. And I think consulting gave me one level of training. And what I'm doing now is kind of the next level of training as an operator, where it trains you in very different things, and hopefully just rounds out my skill set as a business person.
Sounds good. So chalk another one up to networking and developing those relationships, because if you know people that are doing interesting things, chances are they'll bring you over to help you with building some of those interesting things. What would you say is some of the SWIKE, the stuff I wish I knew earlier, that you'd give to young Mika, little Mika in high school, university, or elsewhere along the way? And then what can folks look forward to hearing from you in the future? So kind of future aspirations and stuff. So what sort of SWIKE would you have for yourself?
The SWIKE for me would be, this is going to sound corny, but it's treat your life and your career the same way that you would building a business or testing business hypotheses, in the sense that we take a very non-MVP approach to choosing our career sometimes. Sure. Where we'll think, okay, maybe one day I want to be a doctor or a lawyer. And that is something that when you're in high school, it's this vague idea. We might pursue it without talking to a lot of people in the field, and think like, okay, I'm going to go do my science undergrad, and then I'm going to go apply to medical school. And then maybe at that point, you'll find out it's for you. You might find out it's not for you. And I think in my case, it was, I thought I wanted to do business, but I really had no idea. I didn't talk to people that were doing different things in business. I didn't really know what it meant to work in business. And I also had no idea what it meant to work in history. I think it's very easy for people to poo-poo humanities or liberal arts, saying that, oh, there's no jobs there. What are you going to do? Be a professor? There's only so many professor jobs. But I had no idea. And I think a lot of people who say that also don't really know. So I think the advice I would have given to myself would have been, talk to people earlier, test your ideas in the real world, rather than always running them around in your own head and in the small circle of family and immediate friends. We're asking a lot of high school students, where it's like, choose your undergrad. That doesn't set your life, but it does influence it. If you study business and I wanted to be a historian, it kind of does close that door, unless I'm willing to turn my life upside down. So it's the kind of thing where, I would just encourage people to test any hypotheses that they have the same way that they would if they're building a product. Build an MVP first, maybe do some volunteering projects on the side in your field to find out if it's something that you actually like. And then that'll give you a much better sense of, do I genuinely enjoy doing this job? Because I think it's too late to know that once you've already sunk a ton of time and resources in it. It's much better to test earlier on and really focus on what makes you happy, what is fulfilling and energizing for you, assuming that you have the privilege to do that, rather than what is the sexiest job that everyone else is applying for. Because I think a lot of undergraduate students specifically will fall into that trap. So high school is kind of a time of confusion where people don't really think through their decisions too much. And in undergrad, it's I think situation where there's a lot of peer pressure and it'll warp someone's decision making. So resisting those two forces and testing early, talking to people early, I think is a great thing for people to do regardless of what they're interested in. And it would have helped me a lot, and it might have ended up with me choosing a different career path.
Sure. Yeah, I think what resonates with me on that one is it's like someone who wants to get into swimming by reading every single book on swimming, but never getting into the pool, right? Until like 4 or 10 years later when they actually kind of graduate, right? And the other part about the kind of following the herd, right, where you're influenced by the people everyone's going to accounting or finance or whatever it is that your group of friends. Well, try to look at for the counter examples of what the other people doing different things, and maybe that resonates with you a little bit more, right? But at the end of the day, sometimes you just gotta jump in the pool, right? And it's not a matter about what other people's opinions are. It's a matter about, well, what have you experienced to be true for yourself? So I think a lot of that is great. So what are some of the future aspirations? What can folks look to hearing from you a little bit more in the future? And if folks want to connect with you, where could they reach out to you?
Yeah. So I think right now we're going through a super exciting period at RateHub where we're going to be launching a product pretty soon that's going to allow users to see their odds of getting approved for a certain credit card before they apply. So we'll save people the chances of getting a negative credit check, getting declined, all of that painful stuff. And there's not really something like that in Canada right now. So it was super fun to build that, and I'm excited to see it in the wild. So that's kind of what has me excited on the RateHub front for the next little while. And with Acumen, we're going to be running more programs on coaching students on how to get into consulting, and helping pro bono consulting clubs at universities get better at like structuring their engagements. So if anyone is interested in connecting with me, LinkedIn is a great place. Also, if you go to acumen.org, if you want to contact me through there, if you're curious about consulting or there's any way that I can help someone in their career, always happy to pay forward the mountains of help that I've myself received. Yeah, so I'd say those are probably the best places to reach me, and hopefully I'll be able to help someone in your network, Luki.
That's perfect. Thanks so much, Mika, for joining us. And hopefully we'll have you back to do maybe a deeper dive of getting into consulting and some of those myths and misconceptions that you talked about. And yeah, there could be other things we kind of joked about, talking about you and your Harry Potter impersonations. So maybe with that, for the folks that are watching on YouTube.
That's where the real money
is. Daniel Radcliffe. There you go. Yeah, it can be his stunt double, body double, or whatever there. So awesome. Thanks a lot, Mika, for joining us for this episode. And hopefully we'll have you back for a future episode.
Thanks so much, Luki. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us on the SIWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Lukidanu, Lukidanu, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.